21st century learning, 21st century education. You probably have heard that term a little bit. What kinds of comes to mind when you hear that?
I guess like there's a new way.
Sure. Yeah, definitely, that there's some new ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And so part of our vision and mission at District 123 is really making sure we're trying to be a leader in education and making sure our students are getting the learning they need to be for successful tomorrow. So we're trying to make sure we stay current with our students, that we're preparing them for their tomorrow. I like to say sometimes, looking forward to their tomorrow and not our past. Because I think we all experience school, and what our children are experiencing is a little different than what we remember, right? So I'm going to show just a quick video about 21st century education. And I think it's a great just visual of kind of encompasses everything about 21st century education. Let me make sure I get my speakers up here. What's kind of your thoughts after you kind of see that, just all that flash kind of in front of you a little bit? What were you thinking about, or what questions surfaced?
True. what it was saying, and yeah, I mean, that's the world, the new world. I mean,
it's changing very quickly for our kids and for all of us, really. When you think about even ourselves as grown-ups, the work that we are being asked to do and the types of tasks we do in our jobs have changed dramatically. When I started teaching versus now, just my phone, my laptop, and all of those pieces. And the piece too to think about as we think about 21st century learning, I know one of the things that always popped in my mind, and even talking with my husband and things, is it's all technology. And that's a huge portion of it. That is a piece of it that has been brought to that surface of something we use routinely every day. But it also has lots of other components embedded in it. Oh, goodness. Let me click back here. All right. So let's take a look at this. And it's looking at those life and career skills, learning and innovation skills. So it's about technology, but it's also using technology as tools to get at collaboration and that critical thinking component and communication. How do we communicate with each other? When we think about the skills we need in our jobs today, lots of it is about how do we work with people? How do we communicate? How do we collaborate? How do we problem solve? And so we've been taking a look at how do we bring that into our classrooms, and what types of learning can we bring into our classroom that has all of those components, that creativity, the problem solving, communication, critical thinking. And one way that we're going to talk about that a little bit today. What do you remember when you were in school, when you were given, you're in your classroom, your reading classroom, let's say, and what type of activity do you have a memory of?
Oh, yes, a textbook.
Mm-hmm.
Textbook. And
Right? We all had textbooks. And one of the activities that we're going to look at things in two ways. A traditional way of teaching, and then kind of what would be an activity we could do incorporating 21st century learning. Oh, one more piece I forgot. I apologize. I'm going to come back to. I wanted to talk about the difference in jobs that we have talked. We were sort of started getting to that, and I wanted to make sure I included that in our conversation today. Thinking about what our jobs were like, or the jobs in our communities versus now, what do you notice are the differences for yourself or for the community?
well, now it's more technology too.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're communicating by email.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before it was just by phone, or basically by phone.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's email.
Yeah. A lot of it is project-based, so a group of people coming around a problem to work on it, to solve it together, whereas, in 21st century it was more routine. I did the same thing every day and kind of going through my day in the same fashion that I always did. It was more top-down, given that directives, and I follow it and I move forward with it and I just kind of go about my day. Now it's looking at how do we create structures where we have creating new projects, being more innovative, creating new products even. It's more networking and relationships, and communication is much more transparent than I think it probably was, before. And so, again, how do we move our schools into the 21st century has kind of been our conversations that we've been having around our district, around the educational community. And one of those things that I was going to do an activity about is, which would be very traditional, like we just talked about. You get your textbook, and then you have to do what? You get your textbook, and then you get a worksheet, and we have to answer our worksheet, right?
Yes.
So, one of the things I wanted to do is just take a look at that. So our topic today is about endangered species, endangered animals. And one of the things so I'm going to give you, if I was your teacher, I would say, okay, boys and girls, I'm going to have you read through that article. I want you to answer those questions, and then I will grade it, and then we'll move on to the next topic, right?
Yes.
Which is kind of what, we experienced as kids. So one of the things I wanted to just kind of demonstrate is how can we take that same type of lesson about endangered animals and move it into the 21st century? What kinds of activities would we do, and what would that look like? One of the things that it would look like if I were going to take it and add those components is that you're probably familiar with success indicators that we've been talking about, that you've seen come home. Being a critical thinker, collaborative worker, self-directed learner, and quality producer. Okay, I'm going to give you one of these. So when we think about activity 1, so what are those skill sets in the success indicators? Having our kids ask and answer questions, solve problems, construct arguments, exercise cooperation, showing empathy, exhibiting leadership, communicating clearly. That's a critical skill that everyone needs. Yes. Moving forward. How do we analyze information? Think reflectively, act responsibly, being a quality producer, meeting deadlines, getting things done on time, organizing our thinking. So think about that first activity. I'm going to give you an article, you're going to read it, I'm going to answer those questions. How many of, in that first task, how many of those success indicators did you think maybe I asked it, we'll be asking of the students? If you think about it. Probably not very many.
No.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Maybe the first one. I mean,
Ask questions. Yeah. Because you had to answer the questions on the worksheet, right? About the endangered animals. And there's a little bit of vocabulary here, so we might have to solve that a little bit. So now if I was going to move that into the 21st century, what I might do, and I actually saw this, I'm borrowing this from one of our Covington teachers actually. What I might do, what she did and what would consider it to be 21st century, is we had the same article. So we asked the kids, I want you to think about all that you know about reading, all the skills we've been working on. Drawing conclusions, asking questions, making inferences, trying to analyze pieces of information. So all those skills that we have worked on as a teacher with our kids to make good readers. And then she gave these to our kids. She gave them this article, which is one I just gave you about endangered animals. And she gave them this article, which is well above, this is straight out of National Geographic, so it's well above a 4th grade text, this was a 4th grade lesson. And then she had the kids grouped in pairs, and she had them talk through all the articles, read through the articles together, talk through the articles, and then she showed them a video, which I'll show a couple clips of that.
Exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years, that the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up and built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds and migratory birds started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly but also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behaviour of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion. The channels narrowed, more pools formed, more riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitat. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilised the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilised that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
Okay. So now the question I would ask my students is this. I want you to look at the article. Both articles here are Endangered Animals at a Glance, Before and After Wolves. We watched our video clip, and I want you to work in your group, and I want you to decide, should humans get involved or step in to build and maintain the wolf populations in Yellowstone National Park? Or should we just let nature take its course and let whatever happens, happen? And then I would have the kids work together, read through the articles, make some notes, as I would be walking around and interjecting and talking. And then at the end, have them, they would have to write down their answer. Should we have the humans intervene or not? And then I would have them give me evidence of why they think we should or shouldn't. And then the next evolution of that is I would have the kids have a group discussion with each other about what stand you took. Should we intervene? Should we not intervene? And have the kids discuss why or why not, and what was the evidence that you used to help support your answer and your thinking as you worked through these pieces of information. And one of the things I would prep the kids with is, this is a really hard, right out of National Geographic, this isn't a 4th grade text, but you have all kinds of strategies and problem solving strategies, and all that your literacy skills to be able to work through this as a team. Now let's think about that task. Task number 2. When you look at these critical thinking pieces, the collaborative worker, self-directed learner, quality produces, what did task 2 ask of you? And how is that different, do you think? What difference did you see as I was kind of presenting that? I know I just threw a lot of information at you. Didn't I, right? Just come on. Just kidding. I meant actually, I wish we would have had a lot more people here because I would have had you guys actually do the task, but that was kind of the plan that I was going for. But let's think about that. In our first task, we read the article, we answered questions. In the second task, we took different points of view, different pieces of text. We looked at a video, so we had lots of different sources of information. And then I had to use all that I know about literacy and reading to access this information. And then think critically about, what would I do? Should we intervene? Should we not intervene? What happens if we do? What happens if we don't? And have that discussion and kind of take a stand, so to speak. And then go back in and find information that supports my argument or supports my position about it. So let's think about that. In task 2, were we asking the kids to think critically, to be a problem solver, to draw, make connections? Were we asking them to work together in a team? Were we asking them to be leaders and think about those different skills that I need to use to make my argument, take my stance, make my claim, so to speak? I have to be able to communicate my thoughts clearly if I'm going to do that. Being a self-directed learner, so they had to analyze all that pieces of information that we worked through. Practice perseverance, that's important, and that's why I wanted to highlight the fact that this was not a fourth grade text. This was a regular, just out of National Geographic that anyone could access, because they had to persevere through the text. So I would have spent time prepping the kids about how to persevere through the piece of text, this piece of text that they need to get through. Did they have to think reflectively to determine what stance I'm going to take? Should the humans intervene? Should we not intervene? Should we just let nature take its course? If we do, what happens? And then a quality producer organized my thinking using all these pieces of information. I had to probably ask a few questions of my teacher to get some feedback if I was on the right track or if I was working through this. So I just kind of highlighted all the different pieces that activity lended itself in terms of 21st century. Which would you rather do if you were sitting in a fourth grade classroom? The first activity or the second activity?
I guess the second.
Mm-hmm. Why? I'm just curious. Alex, which one would you rather do?
Probably the second one.
Why?
It's more interactive. It's less, the only class I really use a textbook in is Spanish, and that can get pretty boring.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not very engaging.
Mm-hmm. Very true. I'm kind of putting my friend Alex here on the spot.
That's good.
He's a former student, so I can do that, right? He's helping me out, but so those are the kinds of things that we are moving and trying to create more opportunities for our kids to be what I would say, or we call authentic. So there's a real problem. Yellowstone had a real problem with the wolves. Well, how can we use our knowledge and understanding to help solve that problem? Which of these skills do you think you need to use at work to be successful in a work-life environment?
I guess basically I think everything.
I think you might be right. All of those things,
Yes.
right? And so that's been kind of the secondary focus of, our curriculum, our content, and how do we incorporate these success indicators and these skills to make our lessons engaging and interactive for the students. And I get a lot of questions sometimes from our families. A lot of things don't come home. It's not, when we went to school, we'd come home on Friday with our stack of worksheets, right? That doesn't come home anymore because these are the types of things we're trying to do, and you can't really create that or recreate that at home with their child sitting at home by himself. Not that there isn't a place and time for homework, don't get me wrong, but these opportunities require that group mindset of having to be here together and problem solving and working through those questions and answers and arguments and taking a stand. That's interesting. It was an interesting lesson for me to watch the fourth graders talk about which side of the coin they were on. Should we intervene? Should we not intervene? And really become quite passionate about why they felt it one way or the other. And then talking about their evidence. I was so proud of the kids. I thought they did an amazing job. And the teacher did an amazing job with the lesson too. I could have stayed in there all afternoon, to be honest. They were doing a great job. So I was like, I have to take this and show this. Now, this doesn't happen every day. I wouldn't say that. But how can we take this and get more and more of this into our classrooms so that our kids are utilizing all of those skills together and have time to practice and apply those? Because, when we put kids in groups and we have them talk and we have them problem solve, there's some things we have to, teach them about routines and how do we work together and how do we resolve conflict and some of those pieces. But when we can get that, we build that understanding of the kids and get them to get at this level of understanding, it's just amazing watching the kids, what they're gaining from it and their experiences.
I think this way helps them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, like, if you read something, you don't understand you don't understand
Everything, right.
So I think this is good idea for them. I think this helps them a lot.
You know, the kids were taking notes, they were kind of highlighting their pieces of evidence and talking about, well, what do you think? What do you think? And one of the things that I did, the other piece that I thought was just a great natural benefit of this lesson, because it was not fourth grade text, kids that were struggling, they were all working together to make sense of it and to figure out what do I know, what can I glean from this, what do I understand, and then how can I use all of that to create my decision about whether I'm going to get involved or not, and which I thought was the beauty of a part of that lesson, that sometimes we don't always, is that thing we don't intend, but it's, you know, the great side benefit, I guess, of the kids stepping in and helping each other. What questions do you have for me about 21st century learning?
Well, like what I have noticed, like right now they don't even take like books home, reading book. I mean, they don't take out math or books,
Right.
textbooks. They don't take anything home. The only thing that I will ask is like when they have homework. Well, I came up to one of the parents, so now I have an idea where to look for the homework.
Did you come to the math night?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So, but for reading.
For reading, most of our homework for reading is just going to be having them read.
Okay. Yeah,
You
that's.
know, and do the reading challenge. That's right, Miss Rodriguez. So we have pretty much everybody, every grade level, K through 5. Our reading homework is to just have kids read for 20 to 30 minutes or longer, but at least 20 to 30 minutes. And that's really because we want them to practice reading and developing that love of reading and gaining that love of information. And then we utilize those pieces of learning how to read, becoming better readers, to use for these types of activities. And so there isn't going to be a lot of reading homework like this. This stuff isn't probably going to come home because part of this is about the discussion that happens. When we have kids read anything for any purpose at school, is we have them then talk about what did they read? How does that fit with what we're asking them to do? So it might be to write and respond to that. It might be to collaborate with a team of students, like in this project, to talk about how do I use reading to gain information to solve a problem. Okay? So if they just read, if I could get every student at Covington to read for 20 to 30 minutes a night, oh, it'd be golden. I'd be so excited. Because just that practice of reading in books that they understand, so they can get on, if they don't bring home a book, because every student should have books that are their level, either a book baggie, or in the older grades they just have several books. They can also, the older grade, the 5th grade, can use their Chromebooks and access our library and check out books electronically. They can go on Reading A to Z, they're RAS kids, and that has everything set up for them to read. So there's a lot of different ways that they could read. Even if they pick up the newspaper, as long as they're reading, that would be a great help. That'll go a long way to further their knowledge and understanding and literacy in the classroom. And that's homework I think everyone has every night. And then the bonus, because it's homework every night, we've added the reading challenge. So those kids that do, everybody should be doing the homework, but if you take that extra step and do the reading challenge, which is a small book report or small fun project, we try to make it fun. Ms. Rodriguez tries to make it fun for our kids. Then they get, the highest readers get recognized by me, and they get a prize or some kind of prize throughout the month, and then all of those names go in a pool, and then we have some kind of end of the year celebration for the people who read the most. Plus they get on the board, they help their class move through their board that's right out here. So that would be another thing to kind of just keep moving forward with the kids. It's getting them to read every night.
Yeah, that's what we're trying for them to read.
And I think once they find, my daughter was, every night when she was in 1st and 2nd grade, it was like pulling teeth to get her to read. And then as soon as she found a series that she loves, once she kind of got hooked into a certain series, I can't get the books fast enough at home. Like, she goes through books like every 2 days.
With my son, who just went to get something to drink, his thing, he he was actually a low reader, and then he got some reading intervention in first grade into second grade. And second grade, he discovered graphic novels.
Yes.
And boom, then he was reading. Third grade. By the time he was in fifth grade, he read H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, the book, by fifth grade. It was like the trick, I always tell parents, the trick is finding something.
The topic, the type
Even
of
if it's,
book.
like I have one family whose son discovered a series of books that I have. And it's like all of a sudden, okay, he likes those books, we're done with that one, let me get you another one. Okay,
Right.
let's go. And they're lower than what he should typically be reading, but he's reading them.
Mhm.
And she never could get him to read. Now he's reading them and he did a book. I'm like, okay, then that'll kickstart into something else. That's how I was.
100%.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is Ms. Rodriguez is at Covey's Family Corner. She has lots of books to check out too. So if, we're looking for books, you can always stop into the Covey's Family Corner. We're open every day to gain some books. And you're here Tuesday nights till 5?
4:30.
4:30-ish, 5?
Yeah. Or
Okay.
email. Email is the
Yeah.
best.
We can
way.
send it home too.
Yeah.
I have a
Anything.
daughter in first grade, and she always take a book. She always
Yeah, I
takes
was
a
gonna say
book
she
with
should have her
yeah.
book baggie, right?
And
Okay,
we
that's
have
what I
We
thought.
would have books. We have
Mhm.
books too at home. Like my son, he's in high school. He's
Mhm.
in, so now we have his books.
Right.
So
And even
they're
reading
their
to
books.
her.
Yeah.
What I used to do with my daughter is I would read a page, she would read a page, and then we'd talk about what happened at the end of the story. Asking those basic questions of, tell me what happened in the story. What do you remember? Can you retell me the story? Like that sequence of events. All of those conversations will help build her literacy and her reading ability when she comes to school and moving forward in increasing her reading level.
And then as the kids get older, I had a workshop last year, and I would tell the parents who have older kids, like 4th or 5th grade, I said, okay, here's the thing. You read something from the newspaper or the magazine, and you find it interesting, and then you give it to your child. Hey, read this paragraph. I found it really interesting. Or read something they're interested in, like for a boy, read something from the sports section. You might not necessarily pick it to read, but you read it and then give it to them. Hey, I just read this. Read this. What do you think? What do you think about this guy being drafted? Or what do you think about this sports scandal? Because all of a sudden you're finding interest in something they're finding interesting, and then you're reading it together. And it's always like you have to sometimes, as the kids get older, coax.
You do.
You have to coax them to talk to you about what they're reading, and then they want to read more. Or you coax them by saying, hey, I'm busy, can you read that recipe for me? Okay, and, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
It's that little
yeah.
stuff like
And then that's math.
Yeah, I used to have my daughter read recipes all the time.
Yeah.
Can you just read it to me while I'm cooking? And she would read,
But, even though you know it by heart, you know what you're doing. But
Exactly.
read that recipe.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sly little
So characteristics of 21st century learners that we've talked about, I'm just going to kind of wrap it up with those learners we're creating learners who have a broad, deep understanding of the world that make interdisciplinary connections. What does that mean? That means that I make connections between science, between social studies, math, and how all of those things connect together and how I can use all of those things to apply it and to solve a problem or to think critically about something. So they are creative thinkers. They think critically. We have them collaborate and communicate with others, creates, evaluates, utilizes information, just like we did in our WOLF activity. And then the end goal, hopefully, is they are career ready and prepared for life as they leave us and move on into their own path. So that's kind of how we have kind of evolved as a school system, as educators. We've moved trying to get our kids to these end goals when they leave us, which ties into our mission and vision in District 123, which is creating learners for their learning for a successful tomorrow. So creating those learners so that they have a successful future and tomorrow. Making sure they have access to those opportunities to make sure they're ready for us. Any other questions you have for me?
No.
Okay.
It's interesting.
Well, thank you.